Hi, and welcome to Drafting Compliance. I'm Kane, he's Tom, and we're joined by special guest Joe Evangelisto, CISO at Tango Analytics. We talked about personnel security last time. Today, we're going to be talking about a story Joe told me about when their company's existing 3PAO lost their authorization status. But first, beers. Joe, what are we drinking today?
So today I went with a Fuller's London Pride. So I decided to go with something that was a little bit more, just simple, right? Not overly complex, not overly hoppy, just nice and easy. I spent a couple years in England, and no everyone gives them a bad rap on their beers and saying they're warm and everything. But actually, what I find them is I found them to be very drinkable, just an everyday, easy beer that you can just enjoy. So I figured I'd go that path for us.
Well, fantastic. Okay, and so would you recommend this beer for like 10 a.m.? Because that's when I'm currently recording. Is this a good morning beer?
I think the English would definitely say it's a good 10 a.m. beer. Absolutely, yeah.
Now I wasn't able to find this beer, so I went with another English tradition. So I went with the Boddingtons.
Good choice.
So in terms of drinkability, I've had both beers. This won't be too far apart, although I don't think Fuller's is nitrogen. Boddington's is. So I've got that fun little ball in my can that I can hear rolling around. But I'll enjoy this one just the same.
All right, and I think this is the first time I've had to use a bottle opener on this show. That's unless it is a twist top. It doesn't look like it.
So let's crack them.
Yeah.
Let's crack them and see what we're doing.
Oh, the sound of opening a nitro beer is so impressive.
Absolutely, yeah. And they just give you it's a smoother, feel.
Yeah,
it's just nice for sure.
For sure.
Oh, I like the size. I can fit it in the glass. That's always something I appreciate about beers. That actually, sometimes Tom gets these like tall boys and like sends them to me, and so this is a very amber beer with small bubbles and not a lot of them. I can tell you that much, and I can actually see through this one almost.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Boddingtons is a little less amber. It's got a little more gold to it. It has some head and it actually leaves some lace on the bottle, or on the side of the glass. So that's impressive. What's it smell like, Kane?
It smells like a brewery.
What do you smell in the Fullers, Joe?
I think it's just got a bit of maltiness to it, right? A touch.
There's something sweet in there, maybe.
Oh, you get sweet. I don't get any sweet in the Boddingtons.
Sweet. Maybe something sweet, something like caramel, maybe.
This is very bready, very yeasty, very buttery. So I would even
sounds
say
like breakfast. Jeez,
yes, it smells like a buttery biscuit, is what I would say.
There you go.
So, all right, I'm gonna taste it.
I wish I could have found that.
Dig
all
in,
right,
fellas.
We'll have a go and see how these go.
Cheers.
Oh my goodness. Oh.
So Kane, it looks like you like it.
Yeah, I think I've just ruined his morning. So.
That's an interesting first impression. Well, I can say it does not coat my tongue, thank goodness, Tom. I'm gonna try one more as I always do, just to see if it gets any better.
I'll talk about the Boddingtons. Because of the nitrogen, this is extraordinarily smooth. It tastes, it's got that creamy mouthfeel to it. It's a beer, so some of the craft beer guys that listen to this, and I'd be a craft beer guy too. None of the typical words that come to mind are going to apply to this. This is a pint in the English sense of a pint, so it's very sessionable. It's easy to drink. There's not about a lot of hop character behind it, so it's not super bitter, but it's easy to drink. It does, because of the nitrogen, it does finish with a high alcohol flavor, which is interesting on the backside of it. But yeah, it's easy to drink. Joe, what do you think?
Yeah, I definitely have had the Boddingtons before as well, and I would agree with all that. I think on the Fullers, I think even though it's an amber, it definitely leans a bit more towards their kind of, ESBs, the bitter at the end, because it does have a bit of a bitterness towards the taste at the end of it. But again, I'm not a big hops fan. For me, summer beers are the worst because everyone's bringing out all the hops, and it's like triple hop this, and just it kind of kills me. So as we go towards the fall, I like, more of the, the ESBs or the lagers and the fall beers. So I decided to not, bring out the October beers just yet for you guys, because save that for another month. So
Big fan of
That's
the
true. Spooky
Oktoberfest.
season is coming, which I'm looking forward to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, we'll give
Awesome.
our numeric reviews of these beers at the end. But before then, we're going to talk about that story you were telling me, Joe. So, just so we have some context, though, first, can you briefly walk me through the role of a 3PAO in the FedRAMP process from the perspective of a client of a 3PAO?
Sure. So, I mean, a 3PAO, from my perspective, what I use them for, they're my auditor, right? They are going to assess my controls and the things I put in place and all my evidence and my processes and my policies to make sure that they are adhering to the standard that FedRAMP is expected of me, right? We're FedRAMP LISAS, so our controls and our requirements are much lower than others, right? But we still have them. And so they're there to do just that, right? They're there to double check on me and to then identify issues or concerns, to identify risks, to give us a chance to respond to those and so forth. But at the end of the day, they're then going to create that package and provide a report, right? So they're not there to help me. They're there to assess me, like a true auditor would.
Fair enough. And so now going to your story, how did you initially find out about your 3PAO losing its authorization status, and what immediate concerns came to mind for you?
Sure, it was interesting because we actually were scheduled, it was a Friday, we were scheduled to have our kickoff call for our upcoming reassessment, right? So our yearly reassessment of our status. And when I got on the call, I immediately knew something was wrong because one of the bigger executives, account execs, was on the call. I'm going, that's interesting. Why is he here? This can't be good. And sure enough, that's when they let us know at that call that they had been informed that their authorization was going to be revoked, and they wanted to talk through the situation and what had occurred and give us a background and everything else. Of course, when you first hear that, I've actually obviously never worked with an auditor who's had that happen to them in any sense, right? Whether on the ISO side or the SOC side or anything else. So this was the first for me. But you immediately have to think about, like, oh, all right, what is that going to do to impact my existing agencies? How are they going to feel about this? Is this going to now slow down my reassessment? Can I do my reassessment? I gave it done in time because that was all, a lot of people do the reassessments around the same time. Auditors at that time period can get very limited in their availability. And, now I have to find a new one, right, potentially, right? Or can I use them? That was the other question. That's what they were pushing. Like, hey, there are options here and so forth. So we kind of talked a little out, but there's obviously a lot going through my head. A lot of it being around the risk that it proposed, to our company.
So, Joe, it's interesting that happened on the reassessment stage. So, thank goodness, at least in my mind, that you'd already gotten the ATO process completed. Can you talk a little bit about where you would have been had it been at a different stage in your journey?
And you're absolutely right. That's one of the things we were very, in a sense, fortunate and blessed by, because we were way past the ATO part, right? And we were doing our second reauthorization, so we've been down this road before, right? So a lot of those, issues didn't crop up, and the timing couldn't, in some ways, be more perfect in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah.
But if it had been anywhere else along the journey, let's say had started the assessment, let's say we were a month in, well, essentially all that work would have been out the window, right? All the work we would have done with them, essentially the money we paid could have been out depending on the contract term, right? And then again, you're having to restart from scratch, but now, you're on a window. Your agencies are expecting you to have your reassessment done by, say, end of September. Well, now you're not going to hit that date. And you got to, so all those things definitely kind of tack on to the fact that it just really extends out that whole process. And then you have to hope that your agencies are willing to work with you and support you through an occurrence that really was outside of our control completely, because their revocation had nothing to do with us, right? It had everything to do with things they had done through other assessments they had performed.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
were there any other immediate implications for your organization's FedRAMP certification status, or your certification, your recertification due to that event?
Our existing certification was not in jeopardy. That was the nice part, because that had already been, like I said, it was almost a year old, which is why we were doing a reassessment. So there was no real jeopardy to that. And a lot of people in my company were worried about it. I was like, well, no, that's not in question, right? They were a fully authorized shop when they went through that process, so that was not going to be in jeopardy. But it was definitely the reassessment. It was the big question, right? It was going to be that timing of it was really going to come into play, and whether or not we were going to be able to still meet our timeline as expected, or whether we're going to have to go to our different agencies and essentially ask for the ability to extend that authorization beyond the normal timeline, and while we figure this out, right?
Yeah, and let's talk about that. Let's like, what were the immediate steps or the actions you took after you learned about the loss of your 3PAO's authorization?
So one of the things I was immediately concerned with was making sure I got ahead of the agencies, right? Meaning, obviously the assessor was going to have to notify, everyone that, hey, this has occurred. We've lost our, accreditation, and we're not going to be able to do these certain things, right? Well, I wanted to make sure I was the first one to reach out to my agencies, let them know what's happening, not the other way around. I didn't want them to seem to think that I was not on top of what was occurring. So that was my immediate concern, but I also wanted to make sure that we had the right language and we were proposing, we had a good plan, right? It seemed like, hey, this is occurring, we're on top of this, we have control, we have a plan, this is what we're going to do, X, Y, Z. So, there was obviously most of my day just went out the window once I had that meeting that morning, right? My Friday was toast, and I spent the day, talking to, my compliance admin, talking to the FedRAMP work, talking to management and executives about the situation, drafting, various versions of an email off to the agencies, getting that, approved, making sure that the wording was how we wanted to portray it, and then getting that out. Right, that was the idea. I was trying to get it out quickly because we knew they were going to be letting people know come Monday. Right, we were fortunate again based on timing that we got word the way we did. So that was my initial like, let me get ahead of this, right, and get this out the window. And on the backside, I'm also kind of going, all right, there's a limited number of free PAOs out there, right? There's not like there's go choose anybody. So I need to try to get going down that path. So that was the other part. Is between all that, I'm reaching out to other 3PAOs, sending them off requests, saying, "Can we get on a call? Can we start to look into this? Do you have time to even audit us?" Right. So lots of activity.
Tom, this sounds like something we don't want to have happen.
Yeah, that's right. I'm going through that in my mind, thinking that sounds like a nightmare fueled couple days. But it sounds like at the end of it, you found a 3PAO. I mean, obviously you're still compliant. So the process or the set of steps that you took seemed to work for your favor.
It did, and I can't stress enough. The timing was very fortunate for us, right? It really was, because it could have been much worse. And I also say, the vendor who had lost their accreditation, they were very professional. They were as helpful as they could be given the situation. They were willing to get on calls if agencies needed to. They were willing to provide information and so forth. Even when I went back and said, hey, I know we've already paid you a chunk of money to start the process. We would like that back. They didn't fight us on it, didn't argue us on it, right? They were, so I would say, from that perspective, I really appreciate their professionalism and they're willing to do that.
That's great.
Considering, they were in a bad spot as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think we'll explore that just in a moment. But if you're enjoying today's episode, do remember to ring the bell for more beer reviews as well as FedRAMP too. So Joe, let's talk about this disruption. How did it affect your organization's timeline or any milestones that you had?
So, so this actually only happened about 2 months ago, right? Really.
Oh wow!
So we're
Oh, wow,
so
this is really live.
It's very.
This is a
very
fresh
recent.
wound.
Yeah. So so luckily, what ended up happening was, like I said, I immediately identified, I think, 3 or 4 3POs I reached out to immediately. One I had an existing relationship with, who I'd used at other companies for different purposes, but I knew they did FedRAMP. And so that helped, right, having an existing relationship with them, even though I wasn't using them. And I reached out to all of them, and all of them, as you'd expect, responded quickly. I said, look, here's my situation. I need to get on a call. We need to discuss this. I need quotes immediately. I need your statements of work. I need to, get through this. So I think I talked to 4 different ones. We narrowed it down to 2. I had those 2 get on actual calls with us to walk us through their process, right? And then we went from there to decide on who we wanted to go with. and all along the way, the initial part of that request though was just like simply before we even start going on the path of quotes and talking and everything else. This is my current timeline. I need to have my assessment completed by this date, by end of September. Can you even meet that date? If you can't, can you come close? Can you get it done this year? Like, what is your ability to meet that? So that was kind of the first like bar I needed all of them to cross, right? And all of them basically came back and said, yes, we can meet your date, with the exception of one that said, well, I can't do September, but I could probably get it done in October. Like, okay, so the initial scary part was a little less scary because it seemed like we were going to be able to stay on our existing timeline. Then it came down to like, all right, then my next worry was, I'm coming at all these guys last minute, asking to basically potentially move things around, make way for me. Am I going to get hit in the pocket? Right? Are they going to come back and say, yeah, we can make all this work, but there's a premium for that, which, could be expected. That didn't occur, which was nice as well. So far, all the vendors, again, they were reasonable, they were understanding. I think a lot of them just wanted to win that business, knowing that it would be a continual business going forward.
Repeating, yeah.
Exactly. Right. So obviously, I think that worked in our favor as well. And then it was just deciding on which one we felt best met our needs, who we felt was going to partner with us well, right? Who's presenting us a fair offer, who could meet our timeline, right? And then you can't help but think also like, well, which one do I think is going to be very reputable? Right? We just had a vendor who had an issue, who had their status revoked, which is unusual to say the least, right? Mm-hmm. So you can't help but kind of go, all right, I need to make sure I pick someone who this isn't going to happen to again. So who do I think has a reputation in the industry that also, lends some weight to it? And you can't help but do that. You can't help but think, making sure you're choosing a vendor that has that behind them as well. So that also played.
Yeah, so, and I want to focus on that because I think there's something here Tom and I can learn because we're still working on assessing and making a decision. So, Joe, did this experience change the way you assess and engage with your 3PAOs, or for that matter, any other third-party vendors?
I mean, I think you can't help but take a little bit more of a closer look at them, right? It obviously can't just be on price, can't just be on timeline, right? I do think it has to be their how they're viewed in the industry matters, right? And I think the only way you can get that is by talking to others in the industry, right? So others who have. So one of the things I did when I was doing this was I talked to my peers and said, all right, who have you all used who've gone through FedRAMP, specifically through FedRAMP evaluations, not just SOC or ISO or stuff. Mm-hmm. And and who did you like and why did you like them? Or if you didn't like somebody, why didn't you like them? Like, start to get a feel for it. So I talked to a lot of my peers, across the space about who they were encountering, what they saw, what they felt. I also talked to, some friends who used to kind of work more in the audit space. All right, this is what I hear on my side of the house, clients. What do you hear on your side of the house as a practitioner, right? What was your experience, in working with these people or working with someone who came from that company and how did they come across? All those things start to, give you a bit of a better picture than just what you get during the initial, statement of work and the phone calls. And, marketing can do an amazing thing sometimes to make things look much better than it really is. And so it's trying to uncover behind and look behind the curtain to make sure that's exactly what you're getting.
Interesting. Wow. So you were. This is only 2 months old, at least this decision, it sounds like. So you're still in the process of reassessing. Is that accurate?
Yeah. So we are about a month in to the reassessment now, to the reauthorization.
So the decisions that you made, are they playing out as you would have hoped? And
so far, yes. So far, everything has gone well, right? So far, we're very happy with the company we went with. They have been extremely, organized, professional, and on top of things. They've been very informative and helpful. And they were so even before we started, when we had some various questions. And that was the other thing that I think was very interesting was, even before we got some of the paperwork finalized and signed, right? We weren't an official customer yet. We had some things pop up, and I needed some guidance. And normally I would reach out to my company and say, hey, I have some questions on X, Y, or Z. How is this viewed in the FedRAMP space or whatever? And they didn't hesitate to answer. They didn't hesitate to answer quickly. right? Which also made me feel more comfortable that I made a good choice who we've chosen. So
It
yeah,
sounds
so
like
far,
more of a partnership there with the vendor rather than an adversarial relationship, which is classically what you'd see in a pre-sales, like with an assessment organization.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and that's what I've always want with my audit firms, right? Well, no matter what they're auditing of me is I want this to be a two-way relationship, right? It should never be adversarial. It doesn't help me at all, right? And they're certainly not going to then be willing to work with me on things as well.
That's
So
right.
definitely creating that kind of partnership early on definitely helps. Sure. But right now we're on track to meet all our dates. There's no indication that we're going to be delayed in any shape or form. Um, and that speaks to their willingness to work with us, their willingness to respond quickly as well. So
Awesome. Best case
good.
scenario.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
absolutely. So then, based on your experience here, Joe, what advice would you share with other organizations under FedRAMP when they're selecting or working with a 3PAO?
So I think the selecting thing, like I mentioned, is don't be afraid to work with your peer group and ask them questions and reach outside of them to really understand who it is you're working with and partnering. Ask other people they work with, and don't ask them for references because they're only going to give you references of people who are really happy with the work they've done. I mean, that's just right. We all do that, right? If you get interviewed
That's
for a
right.
job, they want a reference. You're not giving them the guy who hated you at the last job. You're giving them your boss who loves you, right? So I think you have to, work your avenues with your peers and with your community of others who have worked with these different vendors and get their insight on what's going on. And you'd be surprised what people will tell you, right? Obviously it's all off the record. They'll never be quoted for it, but they'll give you
That's
the
right.
real down dirty about how they feel about things. And that can be truly insightful. It can also help you sometimes during the actual negotiation or when you're deciding process, give you a chance to go, all right, I've heard this. Let me ask these questions to suss that out a little bit, right? And get better insight of what's going on with them. So I think that all helps for sure. That for the process has to be part of it. I do think you mentioned the partnership is huge, right? I think you want someone who's going to partner with you, who's not going to just come in with their checklist and go, "You do these 5 things. Oh, you didn't? Okay, we're done," and they walk out. But no, you want someone who's going to talk with you, interact with you, help you, right? Sometimes these things are not always clear. There's a lot of gray at times, and you need to be able to ask questions and get feedback that they can provide because they've done hundreds of these and they know exactly what's expected. And so you want them to be able to work on that. And there's a fine line there with them assessing you versus them assisting you. So, you know, you have to walk that,
Yeah.
and they do too. But again, that's all part of that idea of that partnership. They should be able to do that in a way that makes both toe that line.
It is their business. Yep.
Absolutely.
A lot of good advice there for us, Tom.
For sure. I mean, I think about our own journey on finding a 3PAO. There's pieces there that I can really put into process right away. I take a similar approach, Joe, in terms of my discussions with 3PAO. I want that partner. I want somebody who wants to come in and understand our business and how we go about our business. I don't want somebody who comes in with a clipboard and a checkbox and just sort of does a cursory walkthrough, and when they find a gap, they just walk away. I agree.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I appreciate the perspective.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, let's finish up. Let's talk about beers. I think I might have gargled earlier just to start to explain my review on this one. I will say, oh God, it's the smell. I'm gonna try a third sip just because this is what we do here. It's actually mellowed, or my taste. No, it hasn't mellowed. Oh, okay. So I am torn between this and that pink beer that we drank earlier in the season, as which one is the absolute worst thing I've had so far. They are tied. I think I gave that pink one like either a 1 or a 2, and I think I'm reserving the 1 for like something worse, and I'm not sure if that worst thing is coming, but I'm going to give this a solid 2.
Interesting.
If you like, I'm not sure what you'd have to like actually. Good luck.
Right,
Sorry, Joe. I
what's
know
it-
you like this one, but not my English cup of tea, and certainly not for 10
That
a.m.
is
on a
okay.
Friday.
There are definitely some hop beers out there. I would feel the exact same way you do.
All right, Joe. Let's hear
everyone's
let's hear your take on the beer.
So, I mean, I think, again, it's just an easy everyday beer, right? This is nothing. It's nothing special, right? This is not something I'm going to go buy for a occasion or special night or whatever. But if I just want something easy to drink throughout the week, it's something I would definitely buy. To me, it's akin to like a fat tire, right? Something along those lines. Just a simple everyday kind of beer. No one's going to like rave about it, right? And get super excited, but most people aren't going to give you a hard time about it either.
Yeah.
Right? I think it just kind of crosses that middle of the road. So I would probably give it around a 7.
Nice. I'm pretty sure Kane is wondering what a fat tire is.
No, one of my friends has shown me they have stickers that they put on mountain bikes.
Yes.
And also on lift poles at Mount Baker, actually, weird enough. So I think they're a relatively local Pacific Northwest-ish brand, right?
I think they're in Colorado, if I'm not mistaken, but I could be wrong about that. I could be wrong about
We
that.
hear a lot about them here.
Yeah. They're one of those craft breweries that spread very, very quickly. So they're pretty much nationwide. So we could do a fat tire some episode for sure. So I'll talk about Boddingtons. I'm gonna echo much of what Joe said in terms of this being just an easy drinking everyday beer. This isn't, as everybody knows, this isn't my favorite style of beer. I do like the hoppy beers. I do like the tons and tons of character and in trying to pick out the different hops. So this doesn't have any of that. What it does have is sessionability. So I can sit and drink this, no problem, probably drinking 3 or 4 of these. It's relatively low ABV, as almost all English beers are. So this is, I think, 4.5 or 4.6%. So a lot of the hoppy beers I drink, they push the 6.5 and 7%, some all the way up to 9. So this is easy to drink for me. I could sit out on a porch and drink it, no problem. So because it's not my favorite style, I'm going to give it a 5. But I'm going to tell you that it's not because I think it's offensive in any way. Actually, the nitrogen makes it somewhat fun to drink. So
Yeah,
there
it
it
looks
is.
like fun.
Yeah, super fun. You should hear this. You hear that? That's the nitro ball in the can.
Yeah. That's cool. That's
Very cool.
All right, cool. Well, that's all for today. Joe, want to thank you for being on the show, and for everyone else out there, please do like and subscribe for more on our FedRAMP journey. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.